Net worth is an interesting thing to think about, and oftentimes we compare ourselves to others and wonder how well we're doing. On today's episode of Friends Talk Financial Planning, we're going to share some data that talks about what the typical American has and what some different percentiles are to give some framework around that idea of how am I doing with my net worth. Hi, I'm John Shear, and I run a fee-only financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin.
And I'm Bridget Sullivan-Mermel, and I've got a fee-only financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois. John, before we talk about net worth by age, let's ask people to subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, and you can help us. So hit the subscribe button. All right, so net worth by age.
Yeah, kind of interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, compare and despair.
And we talk about that. It's a thing by itself, right?
Right.
But then we're always, and it's sort of the nature of what kind of vacations do my friends take? Part of the whole whatever Instagram world too, it exacerbates.
Yeah.
Like, comparing ourselves, but then I think there is some value in some metrics and just going, all right, what are the facts?
Exactly.
And then we'll maybe talk about some of the feelings that go around that as well.
Yeah.
Before we start and get into net worth, I think it might be useful to describe what are we talking about with net worth, right? And in a simple basis, it's what you own minus what you owe. Right?
Okay.
So how much stuff do you have? My house is worth this much, and my 401k and my bank account. And then what do I owe?
Right.
I've got money, I've got a mortgage on the house, or maybe you've got student loans or those sorts of things. So my total things that I own, assets in financial jargon, versus what I owe, debts, that's the net worth.
That's what's net.
Right,
Like
right. So in real simple, if I have a house that's worth $500,000 and I've got a 401k that's worth $500,000 and I owe $250,000 in the house, 500 plus 500,000 is $1 million of assets, and then I owe $250,000, so my net worth would be $750,000, just for some simple math on that.
Very simple. Good enough for me.
Yeah,
Okay.
great. So why don't we did some homework here. We found data on a great website called of Dollars and Data, and we'll share the link to everything here. But when we pull up a couple of charts, maybe we'll take the median net worth, so the middle sort of what we think of as average American, even though technically it's not average.
Yeah,
right?
but I took a whole semester of statistics, but I can't remember the difference between a median, a mean, and an average.
Yeah,
so median is
Median's the middle.
Middle, right? Half more, half less.
And that's what I think of as like, the typical person, right? An example, and I think they talk about it even in this article, is if there were 100 of us sitting in the room and each of us had $100,000 of net worth, our average net worth is $100,000, right? And our median net worth, meaning the middle person, if you lined up from highest to lowest, would be $100,000. If Elon Musk walked into the room with however many gazillions of dollars he has, suddenly our average net worth would be like $20 million a piece, but our median would still be $100,000, right? The typical person still's got $100,000, so that's a great way to think about.
So that's why we're looking at median. Okay.
And again, I think of it as the same. I know it's not exactly the same thing, but I think of it like kind of the middle ground on things, a typical person. So take a look, and great, I love that explanation on things and what's the typical person, and at various age ranges, right? Of course, when you're under 35, you're on that lower level, just building up the net worth. Kind of reminds me of the financial life cycle when it comes to our ACP model that Bridget and I both follow. And as you get older, of course, the typical net worth grows. That by the time you're in your 50s and 60s, you're in the $350,000, $400,000 range. Is sort of that middle ground for things.
Yeah, and I think that when we talk about young people, a lot of times, like the people that are under 35, they're frustrated that it's taking them a while to get a foothold, but they don't realize that that's just the way it is. It just takes a while, and they're used to comparing themselves up. They're used to that, which is what our evolution tells us to do. Compare myself to people who have more and try to get it. And so young people have always been comparing themselves to people with more, and so it can be frustrating to get a foothold, but That's just the way it is.
The other thing that you make me think about with that is you think about as you're starting in that younger range, right? You've been living at home ostensibly, and and your parents, right? People in our age range, you've gotten to that right side of this bar chart here, right? Where no, you've got some things, and you've got a certain level of existence with whatever vacations, and as a younger person, you can kind of feel like, oh, that's normal. And you go, wait a minute, no, we started at the beginning, right? And you got to realize that, hey, when you're at the beginning, that's okay. Yeah. The other thing I think is really interesting about that idea of, it just kind of starts like getting ground. Take a look at where we are for median net worth, something like $40,000 for those younger folks, right? If your net worth grows by 10% and you've got 40,000, what is your net worth next year? 10% of 40,000, you've gained $4,000 in net worth. I mean, it's 10%, but it doesn't feel like you're getting ahead. When you're farther on the right-hand side, you're a little bit older. If your net worth is $400,000 and you earn 10%, now it goes up $40,000, right? Just by that, that's the compound interest thing, right? It's, powerful. We all know it. But then when you look at that, those folks in that 65-year-old age range, their earnings in that example are equal to the net worth of somebody who's starting out, right? It keeps on rolling, but you got to put in the effort in the beginning to make that work. So some really interesting comments or concepts as we see the difference between where you start off and where things go to. But and as we take a look at that, I don't know that there's much of a takeaway other than as you take a look at that and pick your age bracket on things, and it's not a right or wrong. It's just, hey, how are we doing on things? You might look at it and go, geez, I got to catch up on things. I might need to take a look at my financial situation. Or in some cases, you might feel like, geez, I'm kind of behind. You look at it, you go, hang on a second, I'm doing okay with things, right? I'm above the middle sort of a thing. Boy, maybe better compared to everybody in the U.S. that we're talking about.
So next, let's go to the 90th percentile.
Yeah, so interesting to take a look at where are we compared to the typical person. Again, average. Using that word sort of generically, like, all right, on things. I like to think that I've like woebegone. I'm sure you are too, right? Everybody's above average, and we're better drivers and better than all the. So one of the other things in this article talked about what does it take to be in the 90th percentile or the top 10%. On that same net worth measure, right? And you can see the numbers here on the screen, right? Significantly different. I just caught the 35 and under range caught my eye 10 times what it was on that other level, right? A little bit farther ahead on things. And of course, the numbers grow as you get older and closer to that retirement age. But on the right-hand side, looking at something, $2.5 to $3 million, somewhere in that range. I think this data is from 2 years ago or 3 years ago. So, reasonably recent here with things. But, and again, that takes into account some of those people, I think, on that higher end, maybe invested in real estate, did some work there. Maybe they started a business and that skews things. But I know that we've got a number of clients where it's not, hey, I have to inherit this money, right? Maybe there's some inheritance that comes on some of those things too. But diligent saving, being smart with your money and letting it compound, that compound interest over time. We've got a lot of folks that are in that top 10% just from doing smart things on a consistent basis, right? By just doing regular stuff. It's not, we were talking a little bit before we hit record about, what is rich and what isn't rich and that sort of thing. And you go like, hey, you're in the top 10%. Golly, that's pretty good.
Of the U.S., which is in the top, compared to the world, It's,
exactly. But then you think about that, and it's not because, sometimes we have that feeling of, there's the tax loopholes. And yes, there are those sorts of things. And there's, the rich folks have this kind of investment and those, and not to say that there aren't some of those things. But the reality is to be in the top 10% here, it's just like, no, diligent saving, regular stuff that we all do every day, doing those basics and being smart about our money can get you in that top area with things.
Yeah, and then when we looked, we're not going to focus on the top 1%, but it's like 25 million. So again, John's Elon Musk example, it's high. It's significantly higher than the 90th percentile. And it leads me to think that that's more of the starting a business. Maybe if you struck it well in real estate, I think about 40% of the people at the top level inherit their billion. But it's a different set of things. It's not most people didn't save it.
That's right. You get to that 1% level, and it's typically not.
They saved it, but it was like part of that. Wasn't the big strategy. It was make a lot.
Yeah,
and then save it.
As I always tend to think about, all right, how do we use this stuff? Number one, I think it's just interesting to look at the facts, right? And to know, yeah, I've got this feeling about I'm doing well, I'm not doing well. I go, what are the facts on this?
Right.
I think that's a useful exercise. And then the other takeaway for me is just with this discussion about, geez, to be in the top 10%, we've got to do these special things. Run a business or have a real estate empire. I need to do, sometimes it feels like we need to do these things, and no, to be, I don't know what you call this, regular rich, or
Right.
I mean, like the top 10%, you're doing pretty darn
Right.
well. And it's not the have multiple LLCs and own real estate
Right.
and do this fancy stuff and not in limited partnerships and venture capital and all.
Right.
Like, no, you don't need to do that just to be, really, really successful. Like these folks that fall into that top 10 percentile is
Right.
just doing the saving, doing the regular things that we all can do when it comes to filling up our 401ks and making sure we have enough liquidity and not overspending and not getting into credit card debt, all
Right.
those fundamentals that we talk about over the years with things. So that for me is one of the takeaways from this is just, regular people can achieve this.
Yeah, and my biggest is compare and despair. I mean, if you are focusing, it is good to know what the facts are. It helps me with my comparisons because I can, it's just human nature. You're looking, who's got more, how can I get it, and that doesn't, it can make you feel bad about, actually, you've accomplished a lot already.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, I think that's a great place to wrap things up here. Again, I'm John Shear, and I run a fee-only financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin.
And I'm Bridget Sullivan-Mermel. I've got a family financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois. John and I are both accepting new clients, but if you're interested in an advisor in your area, you can check out acplanners.org. This is an organization we belong to. It's tax-focused, comprehensive, fee-only fiduciary financial advisors.
That's right. And don't forget, hit that subscribe button.